Shut up, compressor. Okay, the oil weathering adventure continues, and we're now moving on to the Supercharger exhaust hood, and we're using some oil brusher. I'm not the biggest fan of these because, in my opinion, they're a little bit too wet, but we'll see if we can get them to do something for us tonight. Mainly because they were close to the bench. We're going to move on to some earth clay, which looks very red, but has some of those kind of rust tones that this thing seemed to pick up. Now, one crazy thing that's going on here is that these things, one of my challenges with them is they're wet, but they usually kind of like land and stick, and they're hard to shift. In this case, it's actually going down rather well. Okay, happy with that tone that we're getting. Just a little bit of dark brown into the mix. Okay, let's try that again. Hey, layers, right? That is black and Starship grime. Okay, I think that's looking better. I've been having some decent luck with those things, so maybe we can try a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to try some dust and some medium gray here. And this is a slow process. Maybe I shouldn't be using these. Yeah. That's why I don't use that stuff. All right. Worked out well on the hood though. Okay, enough fucking around with oil brushers. I've tried. They don't do what I want. Okay, enough fucking around with oil brushers. They're not really doing what I want, so I'm bringing out the ABT 502 colors of... Where the fuck did the other one go? There it is. Dust, cream brown, and neutral gray, which really doesn't look neutral gray. Okay. That's more like it. Now, while we're here, let that sit for a few minutes, come back to it. Let's move on to the wastegates for a little bit. One thing about oil weathering is it goes through brushes like nobody's business. The idea here is to have streaks kind of going back and eventually just getting a bit dispersed and diluted by airflow. Looks pretty decent. And we go up here to this one. And so the idea here is these fuselage louvers are catching stuff that's being sucked out thanks to Venturi effect as the air flows past the fuselage. And they have to go somewhere, and so they're hitting the resistance of the and so they're hitting the resistance of the supercharger exhaust hood and kind of deflecting around it here. Would neatly explain some of the weird sort of gunk I see built up in this section on a few reference photos. This side will be the hard side. Okay. That is a lot of spillage. Okay, so what all did we get done on the underside? Well, basically, we made it dirty. So the ejector chutes and the stains from those we've already covered. Tonight's big stories are the wastegates, the fuselage louvers here, and the exhaust coming out of the supercharger turbine. So these are all sort of a team effort, mix of oils, a few oil brushers to help kind of mess up the turbine exhaust hood, but then mainly we had a mix of dust, neutral gray, sepia, starship filth, and black, with sepia, starship filth, and black playing the hero roles here. So basically the idea of what's going on with this is dirty engine, maybe running rich, whatever, it's spitting stuff out the wastegate right here, streams back along the fuselage, makes everything dirty, kind of peters out once it gets a certain amount back. And so that explains what's going on there. These fuselage louvers basically were in charge of, I assume, getting air moving in the fuselage around the various exhaust tubes and other internal ducting for all the stuff going on inside of the Jug's crazy powertrain. But if there were leaks, if there was, grime and condensation that kind of liquefied a bit, the Venturi effect of the airflow flowing past these louvers would suck out whatever was in there. So that's what you see here, assuming there is a leak somewhere, something like that, associated with the hot rodded R2800. That flows back, and because airflow is awesome, it hits the supercharger exhaust hood and kind of spatters. And so then you get this sort of crud along the top of the exhaust hood right there that shows up in a couple photos. So that's basically that. To get this streaking, it was, as you saw in the video, it was a matter of getting all the colors kind of in place and then a broad brush to just drag it back. The reason I'm doing that is because that's not really exhaust, it's fluid. So that's engine oil and shit like that coming out. And yeah, so with that, the Jug is pretty much through weathering, and we're really, really close to being able to call this one done. What remains to be done? Well, I've got to cover off on like the underside lighting and stuff. I've got to do the wingtip lights. I've got to do the landing gear still. I've got the gear struts mostly there. They need to be wired up for brake lines. Once the tires dry, because I went back and added oils to them too, they're going to get a good old flat coat to suck the life out of any potential sheen. They need to get added to the gear struts, added to the aircraft. Gear doors need to go on. Antenna needs to go on. I need to add the little fuselage or canopy slider. I need to add, if I have them anywhere, I need to add rear view mirrors. I need to add the antenna. I need to finish detailing the HUD, or not the HUD. I need to finish detailing the Gunsight from way back when and install that guy. And at that point, we'll be pretty close to done. But yeah, this is coming along.